that temperatures went up and down with the cycles of the ice ages, and CO2 followed those as well. And sea level actually also went up and down with the ice ages, because as you build a gigantic ice sheet over North America, the water has to come from somewhere, and it comes from the oceans. So during that period, 20,000 years ago, the oceans were 120 meters lower than they were today. So this is when you had things like a land bridge across the Bering Strait, and North America and Siberia were essentially connected. And so as we warmed up out of that period, sea levels began to rise, and those ice sheets began to melt. And we had incredibly fast sea level rise about 10,000 years ago. And then it really started to level out. And if you look at just the last couple thousand years, we have a very new, very exciting record of this, incredibly accurate from, of all places, North Carolina. And in North Carolina, the land itself is sinking a little bit. And as it does, the ocean crawls up these salt marshes. The sea level crawls up these salt marshes. And it leaves behind a record, because they're little critters that like to live in very specific levels in the tidal range. And you can dig a core in these salt marshes, or a number of cores, and you can reconstruct sea level back 2,000 years. And when you do that, and you account for the local land motion, what you see is that we essentially had 2,000 years, or at least 1,000 years, of very stable sea level. Sea levels were not changing hardly at all. Then, during what was called the medieval warm period, we had a little bit of rise right through here. And during what was called the Little Ice Age, we had maybe a little bit of decline. But what's really striking about this picture, what's really the amazing part, the last 150 years, where sea level's rising at 2 millimeters per year, in agreement with local tide gauges, by the way. These data have been verified by nearby actual instruments. And incredibly, this rate of sea level rise is different than anything we've seen in the last 2,000 years. So, remember, we've been through these ice ages, little ice ages and little warm periods, cycles of the sun coming and going, and tilt of the Earth's axis and so forth, but nothing until the Industrial Revolution, until the rise of CO2 put there in the atmosphere by people, can really explain the warming and the incredible rate of sea level rise we've seen in the last 100 years. So to me, this is really the nail in the coffin in terms of the denier's argument that global warming is not happening, or that it's not caused by people.